What if I told you that the most expensive investment your government ever made wasn't in weapons, wasn't in gold reserves, and wasn't even in nuclear bombs? What if the most valuable thing they tried to buy was your mind? And what if that same investment is still paying dividends today? Not in government labs, but in your smartphone, your social media feed, and every advertisement you see? Before we dig into one of history's darkest financial experiments, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Because here on Monetary Archaeologist, we uncover the hidden money trails that shaped our world. And trust me, this story goes deeper than you think. Let me ask you something. When you hear MKUltra, what comes to mind? Probably something like crazy conspiracy theories, right? Secret government experiments, LSD trips gone wrong, mad scientists in underground bunkers, the kind of stuff that sounds too insane to be real. Here's the problem with that. The truth isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a documented fact, and it's way more terrifying than any fiction. Because MKUltra wasn't about mad scientists or paranoid delusions. It wasn't some rogue operation run by a few crazy people in dark rooms. No, it was a business investment. A calculated multi-million-dollar project backed by the most powerful intelligence agency in the world. And the question they were trying to answer was simple but chilling. If we can control how people think, can we control how they act? And if we can control how they act, what does that mean for governments, for markets, for money, for every single system that depends on human behavior? Welcome to Monetary Archaeologist. I'm digging up the financial skeletons that history tried to bury. And today, we're following the money behind mind control itself. Let's rewind to the early 1950s. Picture this. World War II just ended. The planet is split in two. On one side, you've got America and capitalism. On the other, the Soviet Union and communism. And both sides are terrified of each other. But here's the twist. This isn't just about bombs and missiles. It's psychological warfare. American soldiers are coming home from the Korean War, and something's wrong. They're making confessions, praising communism, talking like someone reached inside their brains and flipped a switch. Rumors start spreading. The Soviets are using hypnosis. The Chinese have perfected brainwashing. Enemies aren't just capturing soldiers, they're reprogramming them. Panic sets in. Because if your enemy can control minds, then weapons don't matter anymore. Borders don't matter. Money doesn't matter. Whoever controls thought controls everything. And that's when the CIA had an idea, a dark one. If minds can be broken, maybe they can be controlled. And if they can be controlled, maybe they can be bought, sold, and weaponized. In 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles greenlit a program. They called it MKUltra. On paper, it looked like research, harmless science, academic studies. But in reality, it was an investment portfolio, a secret, unregulated hedge fund betting on the most dangerous commodity in history, human behavior. Here's where it gets interesting. MKUltra wasn't just one experiment. It was 149 documented subprojects. Maybe more. We'll never know, because the CIA destroyed most of the files in 1973. But here's what we do know. The CIA didn't run this thing alone. They outsourced it, like a corporation spreading risk across subsidiaries. They funneled money, millions of dollars, through fake foundations and front organizations. They paid prestigious universities. They hired top psychiatrists. They contracted pharmaceutical companies. Harvard, Stanford, McGill University in Canada, hospitals, prisons, research labs. These institutions thought they were getting research grants, standard funding for academic studies. They had no idea they were part of one of the most unethical experiments in modern history. The methods? Absolutely brutal. High-dose LSD given to people without their knowledge or consent. Sensory deprivation chambers. electroshock therapy designed to erase memories, hypnosis, psychological torture disguised as treatment. If there was a moral line, they crossed it. If there was a rule, they ignored it. The CIA wasn't asking, is this right? They were asking, does this work? And here's the part that should make your skin crawl. This wasn't just about torture. It wasn't just about Cold War paranoia. It was about economics. The shadow research economy. Think about it like this. At the exact same time the CIA was running MKUltra in secret, corporations were running their own experiments in public. Madison Avenue, the advertising capital of the world, was exploding. Companies were spending fortunes trying to figure out how to make people buy things. Behavioral psychology became a weapon, not for war, for profit. Advertisers wanted to know, what makes people choose Coke over Pepsi? What makes someone loyal to a brand? How do you create desire where none existed? Two parallel worlds. One, covert. One, commercial. Both asking the same question. How do you control decisions? The CIA wanted to control behavior for geopolitical power. Corporations wanted to control behavior for profit. But the techniques? Stripped of their extremes, they started to look identical. MKUltra tested drugs on unwilling subjects. Madison Avenue tested emotional triggers on mass audiences. CIA psychiatrists tried to reprogram minds. Advertisers reprogrammed desires. Intelligence agencies studied human vulnerability. Corporations studied human craving. One used secrecy, the other used strategy. But both learned the same lesson. Human behavior isn't random, it's predictable. And if it's predictable, it can be engineered. Let me tell you about a few specific operations that survived the document purge. Project Midnight Climax. The CIA set up secret apartments in San Francisco and New York. They hired sex workers to bring clients back to these places. Then, without the clients knowing, they dosed them with LSD. CIA agents watched from behind two-way mirrors, taking notes. Why? To see how drugs affected behavior in real-world settings. Subproject 68. Run in Montreal by Dr. Ewan Cameron, one of the most respected psychiatrists in the world. The CIA funded him through a front group. His goal? Erase a person's memory completely, then rebuild their personality from scratch. He used massive doses of electroshock therapy, drugs, sensory deprivation. Patients were put into comas for weeks. When they woke up, some couldn't remember their own families. The CIA funded this, with taxpayer money, through universities that had no idea what they were enabling. Then there were the experiments on prisoners, soldiers, mental patients, and college students, people who were never told what was being done to them. These weren't accidents. These were investments. The CIA was building a portfolio of techniques to break, bend, and control the human mind. And here's the kicker. They weren't wrong to think it could work. Because while MKUltra was eventually shut down, the principles survived. In 1973, the CIA officially ended MKUltra. But not because they suddenly grew a conscience. It was damage control. Watergate had just exploded. The public didn't trust the government anymore. Congress was investigating intelligence abuses. If MKUltra got fully exposed, the CIA might not survive. So they burned the files. Literally. Entire archives destroyed in one directive. Only a few financial records and random papers survived by accident. That's the only reason we even know about this. But here's what people miss. Even though the program ended, the research didn't disappear. The knowledge didn't vanish. The incentives didn't change. What MKUltra proved, that human behavior can be influenced, manipulated, and predicted, became the foundation for everything that came next. Not through drugs, not through torture, through systems, through markets, through technology. The relay race of influence. Imagine this like a relay race. MK ran the first leg. It proved you could distort reality and shape behavior. Then the baton passed to universities and research labs, studying decision-making, biases, addiction, and persuasion. Then it passed to marketers, who refined emotional targeting. Then to political strategists, testing which messages manipulate voters. Then to media companies, designing formats that grab and hold attention. And finally, to Silicon Valley. By the 2000s, what the CIA tried to force with LSD, tech companies achieved with code. Behavioral economics takes the stage. Let's talk about the late 20th century for a second. Traditional economics always assumed people were rational, that we made logical decisions based on self-interest. But psychologists like Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky proved the opposite. Humans aren't rational. We're biased, emotional, predictable in our irrationality. And once you understand those biases, you can exploit them. This became the backbone of behavioral economics, a field that now influences government policy, corporate strategy, financial markets, and technology design. It had nothing to do with MKUltra directly, but it built on the same idea. If you understand how people think, you can control what they do. Governments started using nudges to guide public behavior. Corporations used psychological triggers to create loyalty. Financial institutions built models predicting fear and greed. The modern economy became a lab. But instead of drugs and torture, the tools were data, design, and persuasion. And the scariest part? Most people never even notice. The digital age, voluntary surveillance. Now we arrive at the internet era, and this is where things get really uncomfortable. Social media platforms discovered something intelligence agencies never could: the power of voluntary surveillance. Billions of people willingly handing over their behavioral data every single day. What we like, what we fear, what we buy, what we believe, who we trust. The kind of data MKUltra would have killed for. And unlike MKUltra, which worked on a handful of test subjects, tech companies work on entire populations. Their methods aren't crude. They're algorithmic, personalized, invisible. They don't need to control your mind. They just need to control what you see. And from there, influence becomes automatic. Here's where governments and corporations become indistinguishable. Intelligence agencies study disinformation. Corporations study engagement. Political campaigns study persuasion. Hedge funds study emotional volatility. Every major institution now has a department dedicated to shaping perception, or at least predicting it. The lesson of MKUltra, that behavior is the ultimate variable, became the foundation of modern economic power. Influence economics. So what does this have to do with markets? Everything. Because markets aren't just driven by supply and demand. They're driven by emotion, fear, confidence, belief. Psychological states that institutions now know how to measure, influence, and manipulate. The most valuable commodities today aren't oil or gold. They're attention, belief, behavior. You see it everywhere. When a company's stock jumps because of a viral tweet, not because of fundamentals, that's influence economics. When consumer debt skyrockets because people are nudged into buying things they don't need, that's influence economics. When a viral panic causes a bank run faster than regulators can respond, that's influence economics. When your feed determines what you trust, fear, or want, that's influence economics. This is the world MKUltra helped create. A world where controlling minds isn't a covert operation. It's an industry, a market, a business model worth trillions. The warning history gives us. And here's the part history is screaming at us. When tools of influence become this powerful, they never stay in the same hands. The CIA once feared the Soviets would mastermind control. Today, governments fear corporations will. Corporations fear algorithms might. And ordinary people? We're not even sure what's influencing us anymore. So what's the real takeaway from MKUltra? It's this. The most valuable asset in the world isn't capital, it's consent. And the battle for consent happens in your mind long before it happens in the marketplace. MKUltra was the first major attempt to weaponize that idea. It failed because its methods were too obvious, too brutal, too crude. But the principles survived. They evolved into something subtle enough to govern the attention economy, shape elections, and move billions of dollars every day, without anyone noticing. History doesn't repeat itself, but the incentives do. And when institutions compete for power, the ability to shape behavior will always be their most profitable investment. If this gave you a new way of seeing the world, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because here on Monetary Archaeologist, we don't just tell stories, we follow the money. We dig up the truth, and we connect the dots history tried to erase. The past isn't behind us. It's inside the systems we live in every single day. And I'll keep digging as long as you keep watching. See you in the next excavation.